Welcome to Unholy Inquiry, where each tale leads you deeper into a labyrinth of mystery waiting to be uncovered. This time, join us as we delve into Hercule Poirot and the Last Guest at Hawthorne Hall, a fan-crafted story that pays homage to the genius and sophistication of Agatha Christie's iconic detective, Hercule Poirot. We are thrilled to have you with us on this captivating journey. Share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you spot any details we missed, your feedback is invaluable. Together, let's continue to shape even more thrilling enigmas. Chapter 1. The Final Invitation. The rain lashed against the windows of Hawthorne Hall, its relentless pitter-patter resembling a foreboding drumroll for the events that lay ahead. A gusty wind whistled through the ancient trees that stood sentinel around the manor, their skeletal branches clawing at the darkening sky. Inside, a lavish soiree unfurled within the opulent drawing room, filled with laughter and the soft clink of champagne flutes. It was a celebration of wealth, influence, and the subtle games of society. Yet beneath the glittering facade, tensions simmered. At the heart of the tumultuous gathering stood a mysterious figure. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, who had been invited as a guest of honor by the enigmatic Lady Agatha Hawthorne, mistress of the manor. With his meticulously groomed moustache and keen gaze, Poirot attracted the intrigue of the other guests. They whispered fervently, wondering why a figure of such repute was gracing them with his presence. Poirot, however, was acutely aware of the unspoken secrets that lay hidden in the very walls of Hawthorne Hall. As the clock struck 9, a sudden commotion erupted from the hallway, a blood-curdling scream that sliced through the atmosphere like a sharpened blade. Conversation fell silent, laughter wavering into shocked gasps as a young woman, pale as the moonlight that cut through the heavy curtains, burst into the drawing room. "It's Charles," she exclaimed, her voice quivering. "He's dead." A wave of panic surged through the guests, faces morphing from festive delight to horror. Poirot's sharp mind whirred into action. Charles Radcliffe, a wealthy businessman and a frequent guest at Hawthorne Hall, had arrived only that evening. Not even an hour since his controversial arrival had incited whispers of illicit dealings and rivalries at the gathering. The guests rushed towards the source of the scream, the atmosphere suffocating with apprehension. They found themselves in a lavishly appointed study, the door firmly locked from within. The very air thickened with a sense of dread, as Poirot, stepping forward, dispatched a servant to procure a skeleton key from Lady Hawthorne. While they waited, Poirot examined the door with intense scrutiny, his keen eyes discerning the faint signs of a struggle. The subtle indentations near the doorknob, the hastily scattered papers on the mahogany desk, and a distinguished black bowler hat that lay abandoned on the floor, all clues that whispered untold tales of violence and confusion. Once the door was unlocked, Poirot entered the study, followed closely by the guests. The room revealed a chilling tableau. A lifeless Charles Radcliffe sprawled across the plush carpet, his shirt soaked in crimson, a single bullet wound in his chest. The sharp click of Poirot's heels echoed in the silence, broken only by the stifled gasps of the onlookers. "Mon Dieu, what a tragedy," Poirot murmured, lowering himself beside the body. He observed closely, noting the position of the body, the coolness of flesh, and a strange absence of panic in Charles's expression. But there was no sign of a weapon, no indication of a struggle beyond the chaos of the disheveled room. He was killed, knowing, perhaps, the end was nigh. An odd statement, but one that reflected the detective's immediate suspicion of premeditation. A locked room. Clearly, the murderer must still be among us, Lady Hawthorne cried out, her pale visage betraying not sorrow, but the starkness of the situation. Poirot raised a finger, silencing her and the others. Patience, my dear Lady Hawthorne. The case is hardly solved by alarm alone. We must unravel the tapestry of your evening. Who shall we begin with? The guests clamored to speak, voices rising high in a cacophony of outrage, fear, and in some hidden vindication. One figure stood out amidst the mayhem. Miss Eleanor Hawthorne, Lady Agatha's younger sister, known for her ethereal beauty and rare moments of temper. She stood by the window, her fingers trembling on the frame as she gazed outside toward the downpour. Her eyes shifted with an unsettling mixture of concern and something else, perhaps guilt. "What were you doing just before the scream, Miss Hawthorne?" Poirot's voice cut through the chaos with precision. "Why, Eleanor hesitated. "I stepped outside, away from the raucous guests. I needed air. You must know, Poirot, my brother and Charles were, well, they were not on the best of terms." Poirot's brow furrowed in thought, meticulously piecing together the fragments of the night. "Un ami du passé, n'est-ce pas? What did they quarrel about? One mustn't overlook lingering resentments during a night of revelry." "Business as always. Charles' schemes of expansion, while we—" Her voice tailed off, and Poirot perceived a deeper hurt in her gaze. A jealousy, perhaps? A need to protect the family legacy? "Ah, mon ami, family ties, they can bind or they can strangle." Poirot turned to the others. "Who among you claims to have seen our dear Charles in the moments leading up to this grievous event?" "That would be me," interjected a chiming voice. It was Lord Wentworth, a close friend of Radcliffe, who wore an inscrutable expression. "I was discussing the new railway line with him. He became irate over my critiques of his business approach, but we parted on amicable terms. I assure you, Poirot, I held no malice in my heart." Poirot's gaze narrowed upon him as he remembered Radcliffe's bowler hat upon the floor. A juxtaposition, Lord Wentworth, to be irate and then amicable. "Next time, my friend, try the normal way. A little less theatrical presentation will pass less notice," he replied with pointed intensity, sending ripples of unease through the air, yet his thoughts meandered back to Eleanor, where the deepest mysteries remained shrouded. The tension escalated as Poirot pondered his next moves, weighing the words of the guests and their alibis, a turbulent storm raging both inside and outside the hall. He felt the strain of what he had previously deemed an inconsequential gathering converging into a throbbing web of secrets and promises veiled in violence. Suddenly, amidst the ignoble weeping and the harangued dialogue, something caught his eye. A single, delicate white glove resting atop the desk, tainted by only the slightest smudge of red. As gasps filled the room, he straightened, excitement coursing through his veins. This was something unmistakable, something crucial. And as he lifted the glove, delicately with the tip of his fingers, the thunder outside echoed his very thoughts. The storm had only just begun, and the hidden invitations of the night were merely the first steps towards an unfathomable truth. The clock ticked ominously in the background, and Poirot felt the electrifying thrill of the chase deepen within him, every mind in the room a potential criminal, every life intertwined, every motive concealed as he turned towards the guests, meticulous and fiery in his intent. "Mon ami, it is clear. We are not merely guests here tonight. We are participants in a most dreadful game, and I fear the final invitation has just been delivered. Chapter 2. A Night of Deception. The storm outside continued its relentless assault, torrential raindrops splattering against the grand windows of Hawthorne Hall as if carrying secrets from the darkened sky. The guests, now gathered within the drawing-room, fidgeted uneasily, their once cheerful demeanor dissolving into a maelstrom of apprehension and fear. Hercule Poirot stood amidst them, the glint of determination in his keen, almond-shaped eyes, holding the delicate white glove with its sinister touch of crimson. As he inspected it, the room buzzed with whispered accusations and hushed conversations, each guest grappling with their private concerns and unspoken fears. "Lady Hawthorne," he began, looking up and fixing his gaze on the hostess. "Tell me, did Lord Radcliffe wear this glove? Was it left behind in the study?" Agatha Hawthorne's pale visage tightened. "I cannot say, Monsieur Poirot. Charles had a way of misplacing his things, but his elegance demanded a certain flourish, even in the smallest detail." Poirot nodded thoughtfully, considering the implications of her words. The delicate work of the glove suggested care, yet the hint of red stained it, a most distressing contrast. Could it be that there were more ties binding the guests to this murder than mere social niceties? There was something lurking behind their frowns, something potent and dangerous. "Who among you recognized this glove?" Poirot asked, his voice steady, attempting to draw them out of their hushed whispers. Eleanor, standing near the fireplace, clenched her jaw, her hazel eyes darting away from Poirot's probing gaze. Lord Wentworth tapped his fingers nervously against the windowsill, casting a cautious glance at Lady Hawthorne. "It would be most unbecoming if one of us made accusations," he said, his voice lacking its earlier bravado. Charles had many enemies in business, but, alas, none who would resort to such barbarity. Poirot arched an eyebrow, aware that the tension crackled like the storm raging outside. Barbarity indeed. Yet here we are, bound by the very intrigue that should have elevated this evening. Who has the most to lose? As if on cue, the door creaked open, and all heads turned towards the imposing figure of Inspector Barnes, a local constable. Suggested by Poirot for his knowledge of the area, he shuffled in, dripping water and pulling a damp hat from his head. "I've secured the grounds," he announced, his breath coming in quick bursts. "No one has entered or left the manor since the discovery of Radcliffe's body. We are safe from outside interference." Poirot's lips twitched in affirmation. "Then our culprit is amongst us. A most curious situation. But tell me, Inspector, while you were perusing the area, did you happen upon any unusual findings?" Barnes hesitated, wiping droplets from his brow. "There were a few footprints by the back door, but with the rain—" "Footprints?" Poirot cut in, intrigued. "What manner of shoes, Inspector? A woman's heel or a man's boot?" The inspector glanced at the guests before continuing. "They were concealed, washed out by the rain. I cannot say for certain, but they seemed quite large." Eleanor flinched, her response not lost on Poirot. He observed her changes closely, the tightening of her lips, the tension in her body. "When was the last time you spoke with Lord Radcliffe, Miss Hawthorne?" he probed, remaining composed despite her evident discomfort. "Days prior," she replied, forcing a calmness that seemed to deepen the chasm of unease in the room. "We've had no direct communication since then." "Ah, but you did observe him tonight," Poirot mused aloud. "And might I venture the notion that your feelings toward him were not entirely devoid of consequence. Miss Hawthorne stiffened, ready to rebut, but Poirot held his gaze steady. The atmosphere was electric, thick with laden words and simmering emotions. The guests shifted, eyes flicking between Poirot and Eleanor, each acutely aware of every word spoken. Suddenly, a frantic rapping came from the door, startling everyone in the room. It swung open to reveal a young maid, her face pale and eyes wide with alarm. "Monsieur Poirot," she stammered, her breath quickening. "A letter. I found it in the study. I thought you should have it immediately." Poirot's heart quickened as she produced the crumpled envelope, the seal of Hawthorne Hall still intact. The writing was unfamiliar, curling elegantly in a refined hand. He took it gingerly, fingers tracing over the parchment as he carefully opened it. "It is addressed to Lady Agatha," Poirot murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Agatha moved closer, anxiety etched across her features as he read aloud, "To my dearest Agatha, the night is heavy with deceit. There are truths hidden in the shadows of Hawthorne Hall that must be unearthed. Trust no one, for betrayal wears many faces. I seek your forgiveness for my past, as I seek justice for Charles. Meet me in the library at 10 o'clock. Contained within is the key to unraveling our tangled destinies." Poirot glanced at the clock on the mantel, its hands ticking ominously toward 10. A rendezvous in the library, an insidious invitation amidst this chaos, he mused, folding the letter carefully. And yet, a warning laced within. It may not be safe for Lady Hawthorne. Who among us could have sent this? "God knows," Agatha snapped, her poise collapsing as she struggled to regain her composure. "Who could threaten me so? I am in no condition for games." "Games, my lady, are what we find ourselves in," Poirot replied, his gaze sweeping over the guests. "But we must move quickly, for this night unfolds with greater peril than we have yet perceived. Secrets lay buried among us like shadows, and we shall ferret them out." As he prepared to leave the drawing room, Poirot paused. Eleanor's face revealed a depth of conflicting emotions, fury mingling with despair, as if she struggled against an unseen current. A sudden realization washed over him. She was not merely a victim of the ensuing chaos, but a tenacious player in its game. Whatever has transpired tonight will not remain in the vaults of silence, Poirot warned, his voice firm as he turned. "I suggest each of you reflect on the evening's events, for someone among us may yet hold the clue to Charles Radcliffe's death, and we are swiftly approaching the hour of reckoning." With that, he stepped into the corridor, the energy of the storm pairing with the tension in his mind. The library awaited, drenched in mystery and revelation. As he passed the darkened windows, the thunder rattled like the echoes of hidden truths clamoring to emerge. There, in the tempest of deceit and anxiety that enveloped Hawthorne Hall, the stage was set, and the actors' scripts were poised to be rewritten. With every heartbeat, tragedy awaited, and Poirot could not help but feel that the climax was at hand. Time may have been slipping through his fingers, but he would ensure it did not escape the grasp of justice. Chapter 3. The Deadly Alibi. The rain pelted against the windows of Hawthorne Hall, casting the grand manor into a blur of shapes and shadows. Each crack of thunder felt like a drum roll, heralding the arrival of tension thick enough to slice through. Hercule Poirot stood amidst the guests gathered in the drawing room, the delicate white glove now laid upon the table, its red stain a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded merely hours prior. The whispered conversations fell away, leaving only the pulse of a heavy silence that hung like a shroud over the room. With focus cut sharper than a knife, Poirot scanned the faces of the gathered guests, each one more enigmatic than the last. "Mon ami," he began, fixing his gaze on Lord Wentworth, "you claim no malice. Yet why, I wonder, would a satisfied business partner express ire? It implies connections beyond mere industry." The words lingered in the air, palpable and laden with meaning. "I would hardly call it ire," Wentworth protested, his voice strained. "Charles was merely passionate about his ventures. Such discussions are common in our circles." Yet his eyes darted, betraying an undercurrent of unease. Poirot turned to Lady Agatha, who stood rigidly beside the fireplace, her hands wringing themselves as the weight of his scrutiny fell upon her. "And what of you, my lady? Did you see anything amiss in the manner of your husband this evening? Or perhaps earlier?" She started, her voice trembling slightly, before she collected herself. Charles, as always, was in high spirits. He was excited about his plans for the railway, his future, only to be struck down in the midst of it. But Poirot's keen eyes noted the flicker of something deeper. Was it fear? Regret? That passed briefly across her features. "Eleanor," he pressed, drawing the attention of the young woman who had remained silent, absorbing the tension around her. "What of you? Surely you have seen more than your fair share of your family's dynamics. You must have insights regarding the guests tonight." Eleanor's hazel eyes darkened momentarily, her grip tightening around the hem of her dress. "I cannot speak to what I do not know, Monsieur Poirot. Love and strife do not announce their arrival." She averted her gaze, embarrassment burning across her cheeks. A sudden thought flitted through Poirot's mind, predicated on her words. What if it were Charles's love that led to his demise? A man can become blind with jealousy. Can he not? The room shuddered beneath his insinuation, and the tension morphed into something more palpable. "Jealousy?" Wentworth scoffed, the bravado returning to his tone. "Hardly. He had no reason for such frivolities, nor did any of us wish ill upon him. But the way he said frivolities contained a hint of something more precarious, a slip of a masking truth." Poirot nodded, perceiving the knots of untruth wrapped tightly around them. "Very well, we must seek the truth in a more straightforward manner. Who among us seeks a hidden path? It may lead to discoveries that we—" The distant echo of a creaking floorboard interrupted him, drawing all eyes toward a shadowed corner of the drawing-room. Suddenly, Inspector Barnes reappeared, dripping with rain, yet carrying a newfound urgency in his posture. "I must report. There are hidden passages in this house, masterfully concealed. I stumbled upon one in the servants' quarters." "Hidden passages?" Lady Agatha's voice trembled, a mix of horror and intrigue springing forth like a gusher. "Are you certain?" "Yes, my lady," the inspector said, catching his breath. "It appears to lead to various areas of the estate, including the ground floor. It explains how someone could come and go unseen." Poirot's mind revved, gears clicking together as he pondered this new angle. So, there lies our potential murderer, a phantom to all but those who know the secrets of Hawthorne Hall. Who, other than the staff, would even dare to tread such a route without observance? "I can assure you, it is not merely the servants who know these paths," Eleanor interjected, her voice steady despite the weight behind it. "The estate was once a fortress. Whispers of these secret ways have circulated among us, the family. I ought to know. I grew up here." "Ah, so any one of you could utilize this knowledge for personal gain. But I must ask, Did you ever take advantage of this, Miss Hawthorne? Poirot's tone turned inquisitive, cutting through the blanket of tension that hovered between them. Eleanor hesitated, but held his gaze, resolution glimmering within her eyes. I have my reasons, but I am no murderer, Poirot. The truth is elusive indeed. Poirot mused. What of tonight? If we presume that someone indeed slipped through this new passage, what was their motive? Could it be hidden envy, perhaps, or a lover's quarrel? He locked eyes with each guest, ensuring they felt the weight of his scrutinous gaze. Our alibis must hold fast, then, lest we appear as suspects, Wentworth observed, his facade of bravado crumbling slightly. Perhaps we should brief one another. We can verify our actions during the time of death. Yes, Poirot nodded emphatically. A most sensible move. His keen intellect spun dangerously in circles, digging into their psyche, reflecting light onto their shadows. As the guests began their recounting, Poirot observed the subtle nuances, the tremble in Agatha's grip upon her pearls, the guilt darkening Wentworth's brow whenever Lady Hawthorne was mentioned. Patterns began to thread together, unveiling a deeper complexity veiled behind their civility. The broken glass found by Radcliffe's body, Poirot began, speaking into the chatter as he focused on a detail that had sparked in his mind. It was from a decanter, not of the study, but the library itself. I surmise it was there the confrontation took place. Inspector Barnes, who had been observing, nodded in agreement. The library has always had an air of tension, especially surrounding the business deals of Lord Radcliffe. Poirot turned suddenly, the corners of his mouth lifting ever so slightly. We must discover the way to this hidden door, get to the library. Suddenly, as if conjured by the storm itself, the distant echo of thunder rumbled, reverberating through the walls. And then, amid the rain-soaked chaos, a realization crashed over Poirot. The key to unraveling the mystery lay entwined in the very histories of the guests before him. Each pulse of the storm seemed to mirror the urgency growing in his heart. Let us journey to these hidden ways now, mes amis, Poirot commanded, a sense of triumphant energy bubbling forth. We shall seek the truth where shadows conspire. A hidden door may hold the answers we desperately seek. As they made their way toward the library, Poirot's quickening pulse filled him with anticipation. The thrill of the hunt surged through him, mingled with trepidation as he considered the truth that lay hidden beneath layers of deceit. Every heartbeat echoed with the urgency of discovery as he approached the threshold of the unknown, sensing that the threads weaving through this gathering would soon unravel catastrophically. For within the walls of Hawthorne Hall, traps lay waiting for any and all truth-seekers. Only time would unveil which secrets would slip into the light, and which would remain eternally cloaked in darkness. Chapter 4. The Will That Was Never Signed. The storm raged on, its tumultuous roars merging with the fragile tension coursing through Hawthorne Hall. The heavy downpour blurred the world beyond the window panes, casting eerie shadows in the corners of the opulent drawing-room. Poirot, standing amongst the disheveled remnants of a once celebratory gathering, turned towards the fireplace, where tendrils of smoke ascended like unresolved secrets. The lamplight flickered, emphasizing the gathered silhouettes, each person enshrouded in shadows, their faces revealing a tapestry of emotions ranging from grief to apprehension. Mes amis, Poirot began, his voice slicing through the palpable hush. Tonight we stand on the precipice of the unknown. We seek not merely the whereabouts of a killer, but the very foundation upon which this discord is built. He held up a finger, raising the stakes, a glimmer of authority in his eyes. The death of Charles Radcliffe was not a solitary tragedy, but an eruption of tensions long buried beneath the surface of familial affection. Eleanor, standing near her mother, appeared lost in a whirl of thoughts, her youthful exuberance all but extinguished. "Monsieur Poirot, what do you suggest?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the relentless patter of rain. At that moment, Poirot's attention shifted to Lady Agatha, who had taken a step back, her hand clutched to her chest as if protecting a precious secret. "My lady," he prompted, "there are whispers of a will that may hold the key to understanding your husband's fate. Tell me, was there perhaps a document unfiled, a promise made that now bears the weight of remorse?" Agatha's eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment they glimmered with something akin to fright. A will? Charles had spoken of changes before the storm came. He wished to revise certain arrangements. "Ah!" Poirot exclaimed, nodding as the pieces began to fall into place. "Then we must uncover this will. It may reveal motives hidden in the shadows. Did he perhaps confide in you regarding its contents? Or did he share the existence of a New Testament with anyone else?" Lady Agatha pressed her lips into a thin line, her internal struggle evident beneath the surface. "He mentioned revisiting the inheritance plan with... I cannot recall the details. I purposefully avoided such discussions. Such documents always invite contention." "Contention indeed," interjected Lord Wentworth, pacing restlessly. "Will can make enemies of the closest kin. If someone here could gain from his demise due to a revision or absence of a signature..." His voice trailed off suggestively, and his gaze fell upon Eleanor, heavy with implication. Poirot sensed the shifting tides of loyalty and suspicion. "Would anyone like to claim knowledge of Charles Radcliffe's intentions?" he asked, his sharp gaze honing in on the gathered family and friends. "Did any of you witness him contemplating such secrets in the hours before his untimely end?" There was silence momentarily, the air thickening. Then Eleanor, emboldened, stepped forward. "He did confide in me about his future plans, his aspirations for a life far beyond the confines of this estate. He spoke fervently of breaking away from familial control that held him in shackles. But a will? I cannot say. It is not my place." Poirot's interest piqued at her choice of words. "Ah, but it is most relevant. While you wish to imply a yearning for freedom, there exist chains that bind family members to the past. A shift in inheritance could provoke darker sentiments. Tell me, Eleanor, would freedom from familial bonds raise jealousy amongst those who would wish to retain power, who may think they are losing something?" Eleanor's face paled slightly, and she crossed her arms defensively. "Jealousy?" Back end of the room, Agatha's fingers trembled as she gripped the armrest of her chair. "No one wished for Charles's death, but there's an unmistakable tension. I felt it during his gathering this evening." "Precisely. And if my deductions are accurate," Poirot continued, seemingly invigorated by the exchanges, "the missing will may suggest both a potential change in fortune and a catalyst for violent sentiments. Henceforth, we must uncover any documents or traces of changes made or intended. More so, any written notes connected to this will." "What a ghastly revelation!" Lady Agatha gasped, her voice a tremor of horror. "If there were indeed no signed papers, then what would happen to our estate?" Poirot seized the lost momentum, wielding it like a skilled performer. "The stakes are raised, my lady. We must find, if it exists, this unsigned paper, as it does not merely represent Charles's wishes, but indeed a blueprint for the future." The rain pounded incessantly, conjuring a backdrop of urgency around them. "Does anyone among us recall any documents stored away?" Poirot queried, narrowing the circle of suspicion as he regarded each individual. "There might be something," Wentworth replied hesitantly. "In Charles's study. He often scribbled notes after his meetings, discussing business and family matters. Perhaps there is a clue." Poirot nodded, his heart racing at the possibilities. "Let us proceed at once to the study. We must tread carefully. What lies there may very well invoke the spectres of ambition." As they moved toward the study, Poirot caught sight of Eleanor, her gaze darting nervously toward the doors, but wavering when their eyes met. Beneath her anxious exterior, he sensed an ocean of untold truths swirling within her. What secrets did she harbor about her father's dealings that could crack the very foundation of their family's ties? Was her reticence a shield or a ploy? They reached the door to Charles Radcliffe's study, his sanctum where decisions had been made, territory claimed, and perhaps the very notes of discontent written. Poirot stepped inside, the breath catching in his throat as the lingering scent of leather and ink enveloped him like a cloak. But as he peered closely at the remnants of a once bustling desk, something caught his eye. A folder, slightly ajar, papers strewn out, one sheet in particular, rustled as a gust of wind swept through the room. "Ah, what is this?" he exclaimed, tension sharpening his senses. With delicate care, he approached, eyes narrowing as he reached for the document that lay exposed. It bore the unmistakable signature of Charles Radcliffe, undated but replete with intent. "Here it is, a draft of something, a last will perhaps, but it lacks a date," Poirot announced, holding his discovery aloft, eyes glinting with victory over the surrounding gloom. But before he could delve deeper, a sharp knock resonated from the door, startling the group. Startled eyes turned towards the shadows, the light flickering ominously. The door swung open, and the figure of Inspector Barnes loomed, soaked and panting. "Poirot, there's been an urgent development. You must come at once." Poirot clenched the paper tightly, his heart racing with anticipation for the revelation yet to unfold, and a knowing glance darted among the gathered family. Secrets were about to unravel, and suspicions would roar anew. The hunt was far from over, and with newfound urgency, Poirot followed the inspector into the storm, the echoes of old debts and new betrayals clinging to his every step. Chapter 5. Vanished into night. The relentless storm clawed at the windows of Hawthorne Hall, rain beating a frantic tattoo against the glass, as if the house itself was pleading for refuge from the wrath of nature outside. Within the hallowed walls, however, the tension was palpable, a different sort of tempest brewing among the guests. Poirot, still grasping the draft of Charles Radcliffe's unsigned will, felt a shiver of unease ripple through the air, intensified by the enigmatic revelations just unearthed. In the drawing room, the gathered family members moved like shadows, whispers trailing in the wake of their hushed conversations. Poirot narrowed his gaze on Lady Agatha, whose pallor deepened as she toyed nervously with a string of pearls around her neck. "My lady," he ventured, "the weight of uncertainty is evident upon your brow. Has your husband's demise revealed hidden truths you wish to share?" She flinched at his words, her lips pressed tightly together. But before she could respond, a sudden commotion erupted from the corner of the room. Eleanor, the youngest of the gathering, who had been standing silently, began pacing like a caged animal. I must find him," she muttered under her breath, glancing at the others with fearful eyes. "I can't—" Before she could finish her thought, she turned sharply and bolted from the room. Poirot's instincts sharpened immediately. "Where is she off to in such haste?" he remarked, a frown deepening on his brow. "Inspector Barnes, we must follow her. It is imperative we do not lose sight of any crucial clues." Barnes nodded, anxiously pulling at his sodden coat and swiftly making his way after Eleanor. Poirot followed closely behind, their steps echoing ominously on the polished wooden floors as they traced the path left by the girl. She had slipped through the door, leading into the dimly lit corridor, and a flicker of fear threaded through Poirot's mind. What urgency propelled her to flee? And was there something or someone she sought that could hold the key to their investigation? "Eleanor," Poirot called, his voice steady yet firm. "Please, do not act in haste. We are all searching for answers." There was silence at first, and the distant rumbling of thunder served as the only answer. Yet suddenly, from the shadows, emerged a figure, a tall silhouette, bathed in the flickering light of the corridor's sconces. It was Lord Wentworth. His brow was furrowed, and he appeared genuinely unnerved, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. "Poirot," he said, a tremor in his voice, "have you noticed anything strange? I swear, Eleanor was here just a moment ago, and now—" He trailed off, his expression darkening. "I believe she has gone outside." "Outside?" Poirot echoed, his heart sinking as he considered the implications, the storm, the danger it presented to any soul unwise enough to brave the elements in search of something or someone unknown. "We cannot allow her to remain in peril. We must find her at once." They raced through the corridor until reaching the grand entrance. The heavy oak door had been flung wide open, the wind's howl filling the hall with a haunted sound. Peering out into the rain-soaked night, Poirot felt a sudden chill as the moonlight momentarily broke through the clouds, illuminating the garden path that stretched ahead. But Eleanor was nowhere in sight. "Search the grounds," Poirot urged Barnes and Wentworth, his voice sharp as glass in the thunderous ambience. "I shall check the library." Perhaps she sought solace among the shadows of books and history. The men hastily nodded and rushed off, leaving Poirot at the threshold, his resolve hardening. The faintest pang of dread anchored itself deep within him. What truths might reveal themselves if they were too late? Turning back into the hall, Poirot's mind raced alongside the thunder. Why would Eleanor venture out into the tempest? Had she stumbled onto a hidden truth, or was she merely fleeing from an unbearable tension suffocating their gathering? He moved through the flickering shadows that danced along the library walls, the air heavy with the smell of damp wood and aged paper. Each step drew him closer to a realm of secrets waiting to unravel. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on the broken glass from the decanter, just visible beneath the mantel. A violent confrontation had transpired here, and the air still crackled with its remnants. As he stepped into the center of the room, his gaze snapped to an open window where the curtains fluttered wildly, welcoming the storm's intrusion. Something glimmered out in the darkness, a reflection that caught his eye as he approached. It was a silvery trinket, an item partially ensnared in the roots of a shrub just outside, glimmering with the feeble light of the moon. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, recognizing the delicate shape. It was Eleanor's locket, intricate and familiar. Suspicion burrowed deeper into his mind. Why had she left this behind? Was it an accident or a silent signal of distress? Just then, Barnes and Wentworth burst into the library. Poirot! Barnes's voice was frantic. We cannot find her. We've searched the entire estate. She has vanished without a trace. Look, Poirot instructed, holding up the locket. This was found outside the window. She was here moments before we arrived. What compels a young woman to brave the storm on such a night? Secrets have nestled themselves into the very fabric of this estate, and we must peel them back to find Eleanor. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, and in that brief moment of light, Poirot sensed something hidden beyond the library, a pathway silently beckoning within the depths of Hawthorne Hall. There is still hope yet, he murmured, his resolve swelling with purpose. We shall uncover the truth behind Eleanor's flight into the storm, for perhaps it is not only she who has vanished into the night, but the very fabric of the living truth, tethered to her. As a crescendo of thunder echoed around them, a sudden thought ignited in Poirot's mind. Had Eleanor uncovered a secret that could imperil her life? Or could her flight signify a deeper conspiracy within the very foundations of her family? The hunt was far from over, and the storm felt like an omen, a warning that the night held more darkness than anyone could foresee. They would search, they would unravel, and above all, they would discover what lurked beneath the surface before the darkness consumed them all. Chapter 6. The Shadows of Hawthorne. As the storm howled outside, a singular clap of thunder echoed through the grand library, causing Poirot to startle, his heart racing. He had an uncanny feeling, as if the tempest held secrets hidden beneath its violent facade. The room, illuminated only by the flickering of oil lamps, cast long shadows over the shelves, creating eerie shapes that danced along the walls, shadows as elusive as the truth he sought. Poirot's gaze flitted to the broken glass on the floor, his mind racing. This incident, he knew, was more than mere coincidence. It bore the weight of dread, hidden in the corners of Hawthorne Hall. He needed to piece together the last moments of Eleanor Radcliffe before she vanished. As he stepped forward, his foot barely grazed the soft rug, drawing his attention to a small, inconspicuous detail. A corner of the mantel, slightly ajar. A glimmer of golden wood peeked through, echoing a whisper. Was there a secret compartment within this ancient library? With a careful hand, Poirot pried it open. The creaking wood released an air of mystery, as if its voice long remained dormant. Within the compartment lay not a chest of jewels, but a leather-bound diary, its spine cracked, revealing pages yellowed by time. The scent of aged paper wafted towards him. Magnifique, he breathed out softly, absorbing the possibility of untold stories it held. Cautiously, he opened the diary. The first entry, dated 3 months prior, described a family gathering at Hawthorne, a mundane affair turned opulent with hidden malice. Charles Radcliffe penned his thoughts about growing tensions among his children, Eleanor particularly, whispering of her father's increasing distrust of those surrounding him. Poirot felt a shiver run down his spine. "This is treasure, mes amis," he called out to Barnes and Wentworth, who had just entered the library once more, drenched from the storm. "What a treasure of grievances we may uncover here." Still bearing the unshed anxiety in their eyes, they flocked closer, interest piqued. Poirot continued to explore the diary, revealing layers of animosity amongst the family members. One mention detailed a long-standing feud between Charles and Lord Wentworth, built upon envy and rivalry in both business and familial affection. "The estate is to be divided," Poirot read aloud, the gravity of the phrase biting into the air between them. "And Eleanor must choose her side or risk losing everything to a brother's ambition. What a fascinating choice for a young lady in such turbulent waters. The two men exchanged glances, their expressions revealing a potent mix of anticipation and trepidation. "What does this mean for Eleanor?" asked Barnes, his brow furrowed in concern. Poirot raised an eyebrow, his mind racing through the implications of the entry. It may suggest Eleanor felt cornered, aware that her decision carried the weight of her family's fate, and perhaps should her choice not align with those in power. He left the sentence hanging, allowing the silence to echo ominously like the thunder rolling outside. Wentworth, suddenly pale, stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Wealth and legacy drive people to madness, Poirot. But there is more. This entry must not be taken lightly." The diary continued, capturing fleeting sentiments forged in familial bonds under strain. Yet, like a shadow creeping across the page, different entries revealed darker truths, secrets of infidelities, jealousy disguised as feigned affection, and lingering regrets wrapped tightly around the relationships. A particular entry caught Poirot's attention, detailing a confrontation with Lady Agatha, a moment so fierce that it sent ripples through the family. "I shall not have you steal my children's inheritance," she had shouted during a lavish dinner, her voice like steel, laced with panic. "I know of your plans, Charles," he read, "and eclipsing shadows shall fall on us all if you do not recall your place." "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, the implications cascading through his mind. Lady Agatha, too, must play a critical role behind the scenes. But suddenly, an unexpected sound interrupted his thoughts, heavy footfalls emanating from the corridor. Poirot's instincts kicked in, urging him to remain silent, to listen with bated breath. From the shadows emerged Eleanor, sopping wet, her hair plastered against her face, breathing heavily as if grappling with the grasp of fear itself. The young woman stood just outside the doorway, her eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights, fraught with the urgency of her unuttered fears. "Eleanor!" Poirot exclaimed, relief washing over him as he stepped toward her, keen to mask the urgency of their collective tension. "You returned, but where have you been? You eluded our pursuit. What drove you outside?" "I wanted to escape." Her voice shook, quavering as she spoke. "From their whispers, their accusations." Her eyes darted toward Barnes and Wentworth, lingering longer on her brother where uncertainty flickered. "I could not bear it. The accidents, they seem to follow us." "A moment," Poirot interrupted, his sharp mind picking apart her phrasing. "Accidents?" His own curiosity peeked beneath the layers of fear surrounding her. "Yes, the broken glass, the storm. Father's last business deal was all centered around a shipment. Threats were made." Eleanor trembled as memories of fear cascaded over her like the torrential rain. Before she could delve deeper into her confessions, Wentworth interrupted with agitation. "Eleanor, don't you realize the danger of your words, the instability of family loyalty? It's time to choose." Poirot, noting the tension escalating, interrupted, his voice steady. "A choice indeed. But before any decisions lead to regret, I propose we all gather, and together we unveil the truths hiding behind family facades." At that moment, the tempest outside seemed to match the turmoil within, allowing Poirot to sense a convergence of fates, a final piece yet to emerge from the shadows. The diary in his hand could unlock more, a cascade of secrets that either dismantled family ties or enshrined them deeper within the darkness. Suddenly, a detail flickered across his mind. He recalled the signature on the unsigned draft of Charles Radcliffe's will. Was it possible that this diary would reveal if that will had ever sought to divide or destroy? As the rumbles of thunder crescendoed and the lights faltered, Poirot understood one immutable truth. The night was dark, but the dark contained promises of revelation. The whispers of the Radcliffe family were far from over. It was time to confront the shadows of Hawthorne Hall and reveal the heart of the enigma swirling within them all. The hunt for the truth had ignited, one they would pursue until the last flicker in the storm. Chapter 7. A Whisper from the Dead. The storm raged on, a cacophony of wind and rain, as Hercule Poirot stood in the dimly lit library, aware that the tempest outside was barely rivaled by the turmoil brewing in Hawthorne Hall. The shadows cast by the flickering oil lamps danced ominously against the damask wallpaper, and his thoughts lingered on the recent revelation of Eleanor Radcliffe's plight. Just as he contemplated their next move, an unsettling sound pierced through the noise of the storm, a low, mournful wail that echoed from somewhere deep within the bowels of the manor. "Did you hear that?" Barnes remarked, his face drained of color, glancing toward the sources of the haunting sound. "A most peculiar sound indeed," Poirot replied, his sharp mind already racing to connect the disquieting noise to the growing tensions of the family. "It seems even the walls of Hawthorne have secrets to share." Eleanor, standing silently beside them, took a step back, her agony evident. "It could be the wind," she stammered, though there was a tremor in her voice that belied her words. Poirot faltered, sensing that this was not simply the product of the chaos outside. "I believe we must investigate," he said resolutely. With a careful nod, Poirot led his companions down the grand hall. Each footfall echoed beneath the clamor of the storm as they moved cautiously through winding corridors, their breaths heavy with apprehension. They reached an ancient oak door at the end of the outer hall, its paint chipped, revealing layers of history beneath. The wail surged again, a chilling crescendo, compelling Poirot to turn the handle and swing the door open. Inside was a forgotten sitting room, untouched by time, but clouded with a thick layer of dust. The air was heavy, almost crackling, an oppressive weight in the silence that followed the storm outside. As they stepped into the room, Poirot's gaze flickered to a figure painted in a forgotten portrait, a woman of haunting beauty, gazing into the distance with sorrowful eyes. "Lady Cecily Radcliffe, Eleanor's ancestor," Poirot whispered thoughtfully, "a woman whose fate may yet echo through the generations. It is said she drowned in the lake. Her spirit still wanders these halls, seeking justice." Barnes shivered, stepping back as he observed the crumbling memories adorned on the walls. But could she truly be here, now? Eleanor crossed her arms defensively, her eyes darting around as if she could feel the weight of longing pulling at her heartstrings. "These stories are mere folklore. We cannot let shadows of the past govern our present." Poirot, however, absorbed every detail, keenly aware of the intermingling realities. "It is not mere folklore when whispers from the past collide with our truth," he insisted, his voice steady. "There exists here another narrative, one perhaps long buried beneath layers of family legacy. But we are on the precipice of uncovering a mystery, one that might illuminate both tragic events and motivations buried deep within this house." Just then, as though in answer to his sentiment, the flickering lamp beside them flared, casting an elongated shadow across the floor. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he caught sight of a small lump poking out from beneath an old chair. He knelt, and with a gentle push, revealed a worn, leather diary, a striking resemblance to the one he'd found earlier in the library. He held it up, watched as the light glinted off its cracked surface. "Ah, a twin of the other, perhaps," Eleanor gasped. "I didn't know about this one." As Poirot opened the diary, the pages crinkled in the stillness. The yellowed words spilled tales of heartbreak and unfulfilled desires. An entry dated a fortnight before Lady Cecily's untimely end caught his eye. "The truth I unearth is buried beneath layers of deceit. I must confront them all. The lies they weave bind us to pain." Poirot's heart quickened. These words resonated with the present turmoil, drenching the Radcliffe family. Was this foretelling of fate, or merely an echo of fear? Perhaps if Lady Cecily was led to her fate by the machinations of those she trusted, Wentworth murmured, the breathless quality of his tone reflecting his mounting unease. It could parallel Eleanor's plight. She was fleeing from family whispers, awash with duplicity. Eleanor caught his gaze, the vulnerability of her expression intertwining with a flicker of realization. "Are you suggesting someone might want me dead, just as they did Lady Cecily?" Suddenly the door behind them creaked and swung open, and they turned to see Agatha Radcliffe, her expression a tempest of confusion, anger, and sorrow. "What are you doing here? What madness has swept the household?" Poirot respected her fierce demeanor, even as he saw the underlying fear. The shadows of her family engulfed her. "We seek clarity in the dark, madame," he replied, studying the trembling woman. "And it seems, like Lady Cecily, you bear the mark of secrets long hidden." Agatha's face blanched as she stepped back, her heart racing. "By what right do you disturb these memories? My family's fate is not yours to unravel." But Poirot pressed forward, his fingers tracing the diary's worn pages. "It seems the past demands to be heard. It speaks yet again, perhaps revealing more than we first anticipated." At that moment, the storm outside reached a fever pitch, shaking the very foundations of Hawthorne Hall. The tension in the room coiled as Agatha's composure began to fray. I must speak to my brother. Charles must decide how to proceed." But just as she turned to leave, a searing flash of light illuminated the room, revealing a hidden note lodged beside the diary, a note bearing the handwriting of a trembling hand. Poirot's pulse quickened as he reached for it. The words, etched in fear, revealed a name not yet connected to the murder, one that could change everything. As the power flickered and silence once more enveloped the manor, Poirot felt the weight of the note heavy in his grasp. This was it, the threshold between past and present, revealing not just who may have killed Lady Cecily, but suggesting who among them was no longer who they claimed to be. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, the gravity of his tone quaking the very air, "the truth is upon us, but before it is fully revealed, we must gather once again and confront our demons. A whisper from the dead beckons us deeper into this darkness." With the storm howling outside, representing not just nature's fury, but the unveiling of decades-old secrets, Poirot understood they had but touched the surface. A revelation was looming, and the foundations of Hawthorne Hall would tremble under its weight, leaving them with one dreadful question. How far would they go to protect their legacies from the truth, even if it meant confronting the demons of the past? Chapter 8. The Confession Overheard. The tempest raged as Hercule Poirot descended the grand staircase of Hawthorne Hall, the creaking of the floorboards beneath his polished shoes mingling with the furious howls of wind outside. Glancing momentarily at the portraits that adorned the walls, glorifying ancestors and gilded moments of familial pride, he was keenly aware that beneath their smiles lay secrets best left undisturbed. The flickering candlelight illuminated dust motes swirling in the air, emphasizing the opulent decay of the manor. Just then, a loud clap of thunder reverberated through the hall, causing Poirot to stop momentarily in his tracks. Eleanor Radcliffe's anxious face floated into his mind. A whirlwind of emotions had occupied her demeanor, highlighting both fear of truth and her effort to break free from the suffocating legacy of her family. He could not shake her last words. The accidents, they seem to follow us. Unraveling that deeply woven tapestry of deceit felt imperative, yet the diary he held promised more than mere familial critique. It hinted at darker, twisting motives obscured by the rain and shadows. Drained yet relentless in his pursuit, Poirot straightened his bow tie as he ventured toward the drawing room, determined to gather others for what he anticipated would be an explosive revelation. The rich scent of polished wood, combined with the echoes of the storm battering the manor, fueled his urgency. But fate had another plan in store, for as he neared the door, he caught fragments of hushed tones drifting under the crack. "You must understand, this cannot be allowed to emerge." The voice was strained, alluding to trepidation that sent a shiver dancing down Poirot's spine. He pressed an ear toward the door, and the words unfurled like dark smoke. "We cannot risk it. If Eleanor finds out, Eleanor is a liability. You need to act, Charles. There's no other way." Getting no proper bearings on who the speakers were, Poirot's instincts kicked in. He carefully opened the door enough to slip into the dim corridor, cautious and silent. Just beyond the threshold, the drawing room was awash in shadows, barely illuminated by a solitary lamp. There, entrapped by their whispered conversations, were Charles Radcliffe and his sister Agatha. "I will not have you threaten my authority any longer, Agatha." Charles's voice dripped with frustration. "If it means sacrificing her to ensure our family's reputation, then so be it." These words pinched Poirot's heart. Sacrifice for reputation. The very essence of family loyalty had begun to twist into something grotesque. He could sense the potholes of betrayal beneath the familial facade. Charles's mounting vitriol hinted at desperation. Poirot crept closer, concentrating on maintaining his silence, even as the storm's fury raged outside. "No, you're overstepping," Agatha interjected fiercely, her voice trembling, though laced with defiance. "You would murder your own sister for what? A lie? For fear of the truth?" A fracture had uncovered itself within the dynamic of the siblings, revealing raw emotions tangled with unspoken horrors. Poirot leaned further into the shadows, his heart racing with the implications captured within their dueling exclamations. The stakes grew with every heartbeat, a revelation thrumming at the edge of his understanding. "And what if the truth leads to the very downfall you dread?" Agatha continued, her breathless urgency fostering an impression of a woman barricaded by conscience, yet teetering on the edge of familial allegiance. "What if the truth allows us to confront what's been plaguing us?" "Enough," Charles snapped, the anger punctuating every syllable. "The truth is dangerous, Agatha. Lady Cicely's spectre has haunted this family long enough, and you know as well as I do that some ghosts must stay buried. I will do what is necessary." A timid knock at the drawing-room door startled Poirot from his reverie. Both Charles and Agatha straightened, their expressions morphing quickly from anger to apprehension. Poirot slipped back into the shadows, heart pounding, as he stalked quietly from the corridor, just before Wentworth entered the room. "Is everything— Did I not tell you that this is no concern of yours?" Charles interjected coldly, the earlier argument evaporating as he carefully orchestrated his demeanor. Poirot navigated away, his mind racing as the pieces began to align thicker than the fabric of the family's carefully woven identity. In a quaint nook of the corridor, he considered the gravity of what he'd just overheard. Dark intent lay cradled between the Radcliffe siblings' exchange. The very notion of silencing Eleanor lingered as a baleful spectre that tantalized the edges of his mind. Sacrifice, fear, and ghosts could only indicate that there was more hidden, a web as intricate as it was tangled, and the truth echoed through the tapestry of their legacy. Resolute, Poirot chose his next steps carefully. He would gather the others in the drawing room, not simply to illuminate truth, but to unveil deception, revealing the cracks in their facades before the storm's tumult, until their souls lay bare like the exposed roots of a stricken tree. He returned to the drawing room, face a mask of composure, as Charles, Agatha, and Wentworth gathered under the light. Tension enveloped them as tightly as a vice. "Ladies and gentlemen," Poirot declared, his presence demanding attention. "We find ourselves standing on the precipice of truth. The darkness has spoken, but it is now time to enter the light. Together, we shall unravel a legacy of lies and fear, for I have uncovered something alarming that may shift the weight of our paths." He paused, capturing their expressions. Sudden dread etched across Charles's features, growing apprehension in Agatha's gaze, and the curious composure of Wentworth, who seemed to find intrigue in chaos. Poirot continued, abandoning formalities and plunging into his revelation. A future dictated by the past must not come at the cost of blood. Do you see? To betray family is an act unworthy of those who honor its name. The atmosphere thrummed thicker as Poirot paused to gauge their reactions, the embers of doubt poised to ignite. "The autumn of your family may lie at the heart of the storm," Poirot concluded, his voice now dripping with gravity. Gathering all eyes present, he inched closer to the ultimatum that had been ignited by his perusal of the diary hidden among the secrets. The real question remains: who among us shall answer for the sins that created such a tempest? Sacrifice is a heavy word to bear, but the truth is already here, hidden within your whispers. And if I am to probe deeper, I must ask the most beguiling query: how far will you trust your kin, even as shadows loom upon the soul? The tempest outside roared, a fierce echo matching the boiling tension within the room, and Poirot felt unequivocally that they had edged closer to singular truth. The revelation, destined to splinter apart the tightly woven tapestry of the Radcliffe legacy and entrenched loyalties before the night drew to its inevitable conclusion. Chapter 9. The Final Trap. The relentless rain lashed against the somber facade of Hawthorne Hall, each droplet merging with the shadows of the manor, weaving a tapestry of gloom within the elegantly appointed drawing room. Hercule Poirot stood near the grand fireplace, where flickering flames painted transient shadows against the walls, illuminating the faces of the guests who had gathered to confront their tangled histories. The atmosphere was taut, heavy with unsaid words and unacknowledged fear, as the wind howled a mournful tune outside. Poirot's sharp gaze darted among the assembled group, noting the discord in their postures. Charles Radcliffe tapped his foot with barely contained impatience, while Agatha, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, glanced nervously toward the door as if expecting someone or something to enter. Eleanor Radcliffe sat with an air of defiance, though her eyes spoke of dread and anxiety, suggesting the weight of destiny lay heavily upon her shoulders. Meanwhile, Wentworth, the family's enigmatic solicitor, observed the proceedings through a veil of bemusement, his face betraying no emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Poirot pronounced, his voice smooth yet commanding, slicing through the tension like a knife. "Tonight, we stand on the threshold of revelation. It is time to unveil the truth that has lingered like a specter in these halls, a truth that will not rest until it is confronted." The guests shifted uneasily, the storm outside reverberating through the manor, a fitting backdrop for the tempest of emotions brewing within. Poirot surveyed their faces, keenly aware of the knowledge each carried and the secrets they desperately wished to protect. He knew that it was imperative to draw the murderer out from the deceptive calm, and this gathering would serve as his trap, carefully crafted to entangle the guilty while revealing their tangled motives. Let us speak plainly. Poirot's gaze lingered on Charles, whose hands were balled into fists. "It is clear that the shadow of Lady Cecily's death chills your household profoundly. You, Charles, seem willing to go to great lengths to protect your family's name. But tell me, what are you truly afraid of? The fateful love that linked you all?" Charles's face reddened, a mix of anger and guilt flickering in his eyes. "Enough of your theatrics, Poirot. You speak as if you know the truths we hide, but you have no grasp of the consequences your prying will bring." "A bold statement, mon ami," Poirot countered, his eyes narrowing. "But perhaps you underestimate my motives and those who dare defy me." He gestured to the others softly, his tone shifting into something more intimate. "The truth is, like spilled wine, a vivid stain that cannot be ignored. Eleanor, do you not wish to liberate yourself? Find peace after so many terrible years? What say you to your brother's claims?" Eleanor's countenance fell, and she straightened under Poirot's probing gaze. "I have my own life, Hercule Poirot. It is the past that binds us all now, past sins, unresolved grievances." "Ah, but past sins are akin to weeds," Poirot remarked softly. "They bury themselves deep in the soil, but can be uprooted if one dares to tend the garden." As the tension thickened, Agatha's voice rose, trembling yet laced with conviction. "You think you can frighten us with your words, Poirot? This grasp of fear over family loyalty is a blight. We are bound by blood, not shackled by lies." "Then let us draw upon that blood," Poirot replied, feeling the pulse of conviction surge within. He awaited a moment, then produced the note he had found within the diary, laying it out between them like an acute dagger. "I have here a name, hidden amongst your secrets, a name that binds you all, a thread weaving through the darkness of your past." This note was written in a hand trembling with fear, a brother's obligation, a sister's dread. What will you do when the truth of this name comes to light? As the room's air thickened with uncertainty, Charles recoiled as if struck, his earlier bravado faltering. "What do you mean, Poirot? Who does the note implicate?" Poirot allowed a slow smile to form, relishing the moment of tension, the way he held them, every breath in the room charged with awareness. "Dear Charles, the name inscribed here is none other than that of Eleanor's beloved. But oh yes, the stakes are higher than you may realize." "Richard," Eleanor whispered, her face paling as, Horror washed over her, the recognition igniting a tempest of memories. He had nothing to do with this. And yet his absence speaks volumes, Poirot replied, leaning closer, his voice steady and firm. It speaks of a ghost you prefer unacknowledged, a ghost who may be tied to the very secrets you wish to dismiss. Stop this charade, Agatha interjected, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. Tell me, Charles, are you so desperate to protect your name that you would sacrifice your sister? Or worse? Poirot's voice was sharp, cutting through the haze like a police whistle. What price do you place upon blood? Would you erase the very memory of Lady Cecily? Charles gripped the mantelpiece, knuckles pale. You cannot level these accusations with any truth, Poirot. Enough of this. We are not on trial here. But perhaps you are, Wentworth breathed, the grim facade of indifference slipping as he leaned forward. The way you speak, one would think you have something to hide. Poirot seized the opportunity, his eyes alight with determination. Exactly. Let us unearth the truths that slumber beneath your proud facades. The victims' voices demand recognition, do they not? He pivoted sharply, letting his gaze flick from one to the other as he unveiled threads yet untouched. The motives hidden behind those cloaks of family, where loyalty twists into betrayal. Are you prepared to confront the essence of your brotherly bonds? Or do you hide behind this scheme to push light away? A shadow of understanding flickered in Agatha's gaze as she clutched her drink tightly, the liquid sloshing dangerously. We are gathered here, Poirot, but can you guarantee that whoever feels the need to protect their legacy won't act rashly? What if they decide that the truth, the shocking reveal, is better left buried? The storm lashed against the building fiercely, adding to the tension that hung in the air. Poirot paused, collecting his thoughts, then leaned in, eyes penetrating. That question, dear Agatha, to distance blood from secrets, is the very essence of tonight's trap. You see, a revelation awaits us, as the storm may hold the very answers. But to snare the guilty in full light, I must stress, trust among kin grows perilous when the past weighs heavier than a shattered trust itself. A deep silence fell over the room, the urgency palpable as they processed Poirot's words, the stakes now higher than the roof under which they stood. And as the first faint peal of thunder rumbled menacingly in the distance, Poirot concluded knowingly, tonight the truth will break free from its bindings, and so shall we determine who among you has shed their moral anchor to allow past sins to resurface. Await the dawn, for it will unveil more than shadows. As the candlelight flickered wildly, a loud crash of thunder reverberated from outside, and for a moment it seemed that the ground itself trembled under the force of Poirot's conviction. The stage was set, and the true denouement loomed ever closer, but in the grip of darkness, who truly among them would emerge unscathed once the veil of deceit was lifted, and how far would each go to protect their legacy? The final trap had indeed been laid, and with it, a riddle wrapped in a mystery awaited resolution. As Poirot's heart raced in synchrony with the storm, he felt the urgency accelerate, like a coiled spring ready to unfold. The final answer was near at hand, and though the night advanced, it whispered of revelations still steeped in treachery and incomplete truths, leaving the unraveling of this tangled web to tackle in Chapter 10. Chapter 10. The Threads of Deceit. A flash of lightning cracked across the inky sky, illuminating the room for a brief, heart-stopping moment. Poirot's finely combed mustache bristled with anticipation as he surveyed the assembled faces, each a mask of tension and apprehension. The atmosphere bore the weight of secrets too long suppressed, and Poirot sensed that the hour of reckoning was at hand. Rain slapped against the windows, creating a staccato rhythm that mirrored the rapid beating of his heart as he prepared to cut through the web of deceit that ensnared the Radcliffe family. "Ah," he began, pitch perfect in his manner, "the storm outside reflects the turmoil within, non? Each drop a tear shed over the buried truths that linger here, while each flash offers a glimpse into the darkness that binds you. Shall we not dispel the shadows?" The guests shifted, as if Poirot commanded physical force, glancing nervously at one another. It was a delicate choreography of guilt and suspicion, and Poirot revelled in orchestrating it. He turned to Eleanor, who had grown pale, as the earlier revelations took root in her psyche. "Mademoiselle Radcliffe," he said, his voice low and coaxing, "I implore you, delve into the past that haunts you. What do you truly believe your brother would do to preserve the family's cloak of respectability?" Eleanor hesitated, her spirit visibly torn between loyalty to her blood and the lingering shadows of regret. "Charles is protective, Poirot. Desperate to uphold our mother's legacy, but protectiveness," her voice trailed off, "haunted by memories long sealed away. Or perhaps it is a veil drawn to obscure the truth that would tie him to the very tragedy of Lady Cecily's demise," Poirot suggested, watching sparks of realization flicker behind Eleanor's eyes. He pressed forward, drawing back the curtains of their fraught family dynamics. "The note I found in the diary, written in trembling ink, suggests an intimacy, a bond that flares amid the storm of your shared trauma. You loved Richard, and yet, it transpires, there is more to this story. Much more." "Enough!" Charles spat, his composure wavering as he moved closer, his silhouette stark against the dim light. "This is madness, Poirot. You twist our history like a knife, aiming to drive it deep within, yet you cannot sever the ties of family with mere words." "But words, Charles, are more powerful than you think," Poirot replied calmly. "Consider how they can weave tales and build bridges through suspicion and fear. Look closer, and you shall find yourself caught in a web of your own crafting." Across the room, Wentworth observed with a blend of intrigue and amusement, a slight smirk creeping upon his lips. "Perhaps, Poirot, you neglect the fragility of family ties. The truth may carry a burden too heavy for any member of this family to bear." "Not for me," Agatha interjected, her voice rising defiantly. "The truth must come to light, or we shall be forever shackled by lies." Yet Poirot sensed a tremor of uncertainty in her tone, which momentarily pierced her facade of strength. "Ah, ma chère Agatha," Poirot pronounced softly, "you reveal a rare quality, fearlessness, but laced with paranoia. Yet you harbor a truth of your own, do you not?" He stepped closer, narrowing his gaze upon her. "You were once acquainted with Richard, were you not? Perhaps too intimately to dismiss. What holds you fast to the past?" The room fell silent. Agatha's breath hitched, and her painted exterior began to crack, revealing layers of unspoken grief. "Richard was a friend, but dear Poirot, I had nothing to do with his disappearance. I loved him, yes, but he chose to leave." Poirot raised a brow, intrigued by her admission. "And why would someone so deeply loved choose to walk away from the very light you offered? Was his departure the fruit of persuasion or despair?" A flash of thunder echoed, capturing everyone's attention. The door, battered by wind and rain, creaked ominously at the hinges. It swung open, revealing a drenched figure silhouetted by the storm. A breathless, pallid Eleanor, Richard's sister, Lucille. "Please, Poirot," she cried out, eyes aflame with fear and anguish. "You must help me. The storm has unleashed something else. Richard's secret is alive. He is—" Before she could complete her thought, a deafening clap of thunder shook Hawthorne Hall, plunging them into darkness. Candles flickered wildly, shadows dancing upon the walls, and a wave of panic surged through the gathering. Poirot sprang into action, his instincts guiding him like an arrow set on its mark. "Everyone, stay calm," he commanded, punctuating his authority with a firm raise of his hand. "Agatha, light the lanterns. Charles, assist her. Eleanor, Lucille, remain at my side. Richard's secret may be revealed sooner than we anticipated." The room was ached with tension as they stumbled through the darkness, whispers of fear rising like phantoms amongst them. Agatha lit one lantern after another, casting an eerie glow that flickered over the guests' anxious faces. Poirot directed the light toward the group gathered in a tight cluster, his eyes sweeping across their expressions, each a reflection of fear, dread, and anticipation. Suddenly, as if on cue, another bolt of lightning illuminated the drawing room, and Poirot's gaze fixed upon the fireplace mantel. There, visible in the blinding flash, lay an object more telling than words, a glimmering brooch, unmistakably of great significance, and buried amongst a few clattering coins. "Ah, Miss Agatha!" he exclaimed, his voice rising with sudden clarity. "Do you recognize this?" Agatha gasped, color draining from her face. "That, indeed, a familial token, surely. What does it signify in the grander tapestry of your treasured kinship?" He took a step forward, heart racing with the thrill of discovery and the implications that would follow. As the candlelight flickered to life around him, Poirot studied the room once more. The look on Eleanor's face spoke volumes, a revelation dawning beyond fear that mirrored every other secret presented that night. Secrets began to untangle, and the threads of deceit, once woven so tightly, began to come apart. "Let us consider the implications of the past," Poirot proposed, his voice steady amidst the whispers. "The journey to uncovering the truth must tread carefully through the labyrinth of inheritance and betrayal." As murmurs began to ripple through the group, Poirot forged forth, relishing the twists, placing them ever closer to revelation. A mere piece of jewelry, or the key to a life unsolved? He leaned forward, eyes shining bright. "The dawn is soon to light our path, for innocent blood does not fear the unveiling of truth. But it requires that those who cherish their names are prepared to unveil their deepest wounds." A soft gasp escaped the lips of his audience, each moment trembling on the precipice of confession. Poirot's shoulders squared. He could feel clarity swimming into focus, where mere seconds thrummed with promise. And then a small sound broke the spell, a faint sob from Eleanor. "We can't go on hiding, Poirot. You must help us unravel these threads of deceit before it's too late." Outside, the storm began to relent, its fury waning, much like the facade of secrets held in the room. Poirot smiled knowingly, heart racing at the prospect of what lay just beyond. "Ah, mes amis, take heed, for the storm may yet reveal its final secrets, and it is in these very threads that the truth lies, woven together in tangled destinies. The game is far from over." And in that singular moment, as the flickering lanterns cast shadows over anguished faces, Poirot felt the coming dawn whisper of revelations, fearful yet liberating, that would irrevocably change the lives entwined within Hawthorne Hall. The threads of deceit were close to unraveling, and soon they would confront the ultimate truth. Candlelight shimmered as dawn approached, darkened by the remnants of night, a lingering promise of answers in the shadows. With a final sharp intake of breath, Poirot knew they were set to unearth a truth that would reverberate through generations to come, rippling through the very fabric of their existence. At that moment, he was more certain than ever. The core of their past would soon rise to the surface, unveiling the intertwining fates that would lead seamlessly into the next phase of this dangerous game. And yet still they stood at the precipice, desperately grasping toward revelation and the answers it would hold for the dawn that approached. As storm clouds gave way to a fragile morning light, none within that haunted hall could predict the emerging truths lurking just beyond their grasp. Each heart thudded with the syncopated rhythm of anticipation as Poirot closed in on the unraveling of the tangled web, laying bare the jagged consequences intertwined with their legacies. Chapter 11. The last piece of the puzzle. As dawn crept into Hawthorne Hall, the storm outside gave way to a dogged rainfall that pattered against the windows, echoing the deep-seated turbulence inside. Poirot stood in the drawing room, lanterns casting flickering shadows over the distressed faces of the Radcliffe family and their guests. The brooch lay on the mantel like a glimmering eye, a sentinel keeping watch over the frayed nerves of everyone gathered. The secrets entwined within the Radcliffe lineage had been laid bare throughout the tumultuous night, yet the final twist was still shrouded in the last vestiges of obscurity. Eleanor, from a distance, appeared a spectre of disquiet, her clasped hands trembling in front of her. Poirot could sense the weight of her regrets, much like those heavy clouds earlier, hinting at the storm that followed. "Mademoiselle Radcliffe," he began, his voice gently coaxing her, "one more truth must surface. You spoke earlier of Charles's protectiveness, but consider, I sense deeper currents at play. What if it is you, in fact, who carries the greatest secret?" Her eyes widened, betraying a blend of anxiety and hope. I have done what I could, Poirot. I thought my brother only wished to safeguard our mother's memory." "Yet," Poirot interjected, "guarding her memories will not suffice in the face of truths that threaten to unravel your very existence. It is your heart, your past entanglement with Richard, and perhaps your own choices that loom large. I ask you again, what was the nature of your bond, and what of Richard's devastating absence?" Lucille shifted closer, her dark curls framing a face drawn tight with pent-up emotions. "No matter how it may seem, dear Poirot, Richard was not ever absent. He was forgotten. So many lives shadowed by regret, the weight of secrets lost in the folds of time." Her voice trailed off, a thread of bitterness, calculated and self-inflicted. "Ah, but the past is not so easily forgotten," Poirot interjected smoothly, his mind racing through the litany of clues that, like brushstrokes on a canvas, sought shape within the chaos. "You said he was alive, Lucille. What do you know? What did Richard leave behind that has only come to light now?" A pause settled, heartbeats echoing in the silence, before Lucille ventured. "He confided in me once. There were more buried truths, a financial contract, an inheritance clause hidden deep within the family's affairs. It spoke of something terrible regarding Lady Cecily, something our family would be ashamed to face." "An inheritance clause?" Poirot's brow furrowed. one that surfaces amidst socialite troubles. Might Richard have discovered this, and in trying to protect you all? The realization sparked bright as the dawn at his back. He was silenced. The room recoiled from his assertion, faces dulled by the weight of his words. Each guest bore witness to the ghost of menacing truths floating through the air. Poirot, must you be so reckless, so overt? Charles snapped, his previous composure teetering on the brink. Accusations on so slender a thread? Ah, mais non, mon ami, Poirot countered, stepping forward with a precision that rendered the distance between them stark. With each brush of the fatal hand, a backdrop of betrayal unfolds, revealing a deeper motive. Charles, surely you have chased shadows since Richard disappeared. You cannot seal your heart in self-righteousness. Look beyond. You are not the only one desperate to keep up appearances. A fleeting glance passed between Agatha and Eleanor, an unspoken exchange of realization that hovered just beneath the edges of their hushed breaths. Do you mean to say, Poirot, that it was not merely Richard's legacy that drew ire, but the burden of guilt surrounding that alleged clause? Agatha posed, her eyes shimmering with a mix of fear and determination. Precisely. The inheritance holds the truth that ties you all together in a tangled web, he replied, shifting his gaze between each person in the room, picking them apart. Love, desperation, fear, underneath every perfection lies a truth that craves exposure. Eleanor, did you not once silken your allegiance to Richard by a bond promised? It was meant to be a secret, Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper, glancing sideways as if to gauge the reactions of the others. Those letters, they contained everything, secrets with Richard in the past, but they were dearer than gold and darker than shame. You kept those letters, Lucille interjected, bewilderment etched on her face. But why? To what end? It was to protect him, to shield my brother from the shattering truth, she replied, lips trembling. The bribes, the promises, we were caught in such a labyrinth of deception. I feared what might unleash if the truths were ever revealed. Poirot's observations fired with excitement. Every thread twisted together, a tapestry of fate intertwined with madness. And yet the greatest thread of all remains elusive, his voice lifted with urgency. Show me the letters, dear Eleanor. Let me glimpse the words that will peel open this aged facade, for therein lies our last glimpse into the heart of darkness. No, Charles barked, a tremor of fear threading his baritone. That treasure is a key to our demise. Tread lightly, Poirot. Dare I say, dear friend, the winds have shifted. Poirot's eyes narrowed, sensing the pulse of negativity in the room. Your protectiveness deceives you. Charles, who are you truly protecting? As the candlelight flickered ominously once more, a knock echoed through the manor, slicing through the tension that had gripped everyone. Agatha gasped, peering anxiously at the grand door. Who could that be at this hour? Poirot, brimming with a predatory curiosity, turned toward the door, confidence wavering ever so slightly. Perhaps our earlier storm has unleashed another layer of truth. The truth that you, Messie, ami, have worked so hard to bury. With a bound, Charles crossed the room to wrench open the door, revealing a drenched figure with a chiseled jaw beneath wild hair, Richard's brother, freshly returned from a land of whispers and shadows. I heard it all. The truth, Poirot. You cannot let it die. Poirot stood anchored, pulse quickening, as he realized they had reached the final moment before the storm, the last piece of their intricate puzzle descending straight into the heart of darkness. What other jagged clues would surface? Their legacies teetered on the edge, and as all eyes fell upon him, he understood with piercing clarity. The legacy of the Radcliffe family had just bent, but it would not break without a fight. The game had escalated to a precipice unforeseen, and with it, a final revelation lingered just a breath away. Chapter 12. The Revelation of a Lifetime. The storm had faded into a gentle patter, the last whispers of rage sprawling off into the distance as if nature herself was retreating to observe the unveiling drama at Hawthorne Hall. Sunlight dared to pierce the remnants of the night, spilling soft hues of amber across the room where Hercule Poirot stood poised, the brooch still glistening on the mantel, a cruel reminder of the blood that had been shed. Poirot felt the intensity of the moment, suffocating, each breath weighed down by the ghosts of the past, lingering just beyond reach. He shifted his attention to the crowd that surrounded him. The Radcliffes were a tightly wound coil of anxiety and hope, apprehension painted stark against Eleanor's pallid features. He could almost see the delicate threads of connection weaving between them, poised to unravel with the next revelation. "Mes amis," he began, his voice firm yet measured, the air thick with expectation and unsaid words. "The truth lies within this very room, entwined in your hearts. It is time to lay bare the shadows that have clung to you for far too long." He noted the way Eleanor's breath quickened, her fingers squeezing the fabric of her gown. With the dampened air heavy with secrets, Poirot's mind danced through the clues that had plagued him for days. Richard, absent yet omnipresent, a memory shrouded in sorrow and resentment, he mused, looking into Eleanor's wide eyes. "And now, dear Charles, you have returned, pulsing with haste, drawing breath to reveal the truth. Why has your journey brought you back, Charles shifted uncomfortably, but before he could muster a response, Lucille interjected, her voice laced with indignation. "We cannot allow this to deteriorate further. Richard's return cannot undo the past. His shadow is nothing but a future locked away." The tension dripped, each word a heavy object dropped into the stillness, causing ripples of uncertainty. And yet, Poirot lifted a finger, silencing the growing murmur. "It is precisely within that shadow where the light of truth flickers. It is a question of unraveling a past that I suspect houses more than mere absence." He gazed deeply into Charles's eyes. "But it takes courage to peer into those depths, monsieur." With a sudden jolt, Charles exploded in anxious indignation. "And what truth are you implying, Poirot? Are you suggesting that Richard's secrets may bridge a chasm too wide to cross, or worse, ignite a flame that will scorch us all?" "It is precisely within those crosshairs that we must focus," Poirot insisted, his voice resonating with authority. "Wrongdoings conceal themselves beneath layers of guilt, and guilt breeds motives that can twist fragile souls into committing unfathomable acts. Has it never occurred to you that perhaps the secret you wish to protect may instead bury you all deeper?" It was as if the room held its breath, the reality hitting like the soft thud of rain on a window pane. Poirot took a measured step closer to the mantel, his voice dropping to a deliberate whisper. "Eleanor, you spoke of letters containing whispered vows, promises made that bore the weight of your hearts. You feared what might be unleashed if they saw the light of day." He turned toward Lucille. "And you, dear sister, shared in the burden of your lineage, for you too felt the strains of legacy pulling taut at your veins." Suddenly, Charles snapped at Eleanor, the disappointment resonating in his tone. "You cannot believe this to be true. If Richard had returned, Surely it would have been to protect us from this calamity, not to unveil truths we buried to save the family from disgrace. And yet, Poirot interjected, holding up a hand, his pointed gaze locking onto Eleanor. Do you not see, Charles? It is upon these very truths we must stand. Eleanor, show me the letters. The time for secrets is over. Your preservation is a futile artifice against the living memory of Richard. Eleanor trembled, glancing at her brother, then turning to Poirot, the conflict on her face mirrored by the howling wind outside. They are hidden. I thought I would never have to show them, she confessed with a cracked voice, her strength waning like the light slipping through the windows. They hold my past, our family's past, and also, indeed, the truth is intertwined, and with it lies every motive that has burned through bloodlines, betrayal, love, rage. Poirot's eyes gleamed, igniting a flicker of hope in Eleanor's despair. You must yield to this before the storm refuels itself. Show me what binds us in this great tapestry of deceit. Before Eleanor could respond, a flurry of rain against the window projected shadows that danced erratically, startling each person in the room. The sudden interruption was alarming, yet it seemed innocuous amid the charged atmosphere. But Poirot was transfixed by a glint at the periphery of the chaos, the reflection of a silver object, forgotten on the side table. He reached down and picked it up, gentle yet firm. It was a small key, intricately designed and undeniably familiar. Ah, mon Dieu, this key! It belongs to a drawer hidden in the late Lady Cecily's cabinet, he erupted, the implications unfolding with chilling clarity. A place where whispers of the past converge. Do not be absurd, Charles shot back, panic rising in his voice. There is naught there but memories, or secrets that bind us together in ways you cannot begin to fathom, Poirot retorted. It is not merely a memory, it is a link, a clue that holds the weight of what transpired that fateful night. At that moment, the doors swung open with a crash, revealing Richard's brother, drenched but resolute, with the intensity of revelation etched upon his face. There is so much more, he gasped, eyes scanning the room. The inheritance, what it contains, the connection between Cecily, Richard, and the contract. My brother's life was but the fleeting shadow against a blank canvas. The air grew dense with the realization of truth cascading down like the rain outside. There, hovering at the apex of despair and awakening, Poirot intuited the fractured landscape of their lives, each fragment pointing toward a conclusion that no one yet dared to consider. I will reveal it all, Richard's brother declared, raising a trembling finger as murmurings erupted around him. Poirot felt the electrifying pulse of anticipation rise, for the next steps must be carefully calibrated. But first, you must recognize that everything we have built is bound by lies and buried intentions. The facts, the shadow of what has come before. In that tense moment, amidst the swirling storm, Poirot felt the threads close tight, the tapestry that had spun them all together, more intricate than imagined. Then let us step forth into the heart of darkness, for the morning shall dissolve the shadows if you would only take my hand, he urged, drawing everyone closer to the precipice of revelation. But before anyone could respond, a chilling thought gripped Poirot's mind. Could it be that they were not just custodians of truth, but also its very architects? The rhythm of the storm picked up again, foreshadowing that the final act was yet to unfold. A resolution would rise, but would it settle the debts of their restless souls? And with hearts poised on the brink of revelation, they stood together in Hawthorne Hall. For a reckoning was at hand that not only promised but threatened to shape their very foundations. The heart would soon beat its final note, and Poirot steeled himself for the truth that would echo into eternity.